Greetings, everyone. This is Jay Pluhar from MetrixLab. Welcome, and thank you for joining our webinar today. We're really excited to have you join us. I know we're dealing with some unique times these days, so we at MetrixLab wanted to do something to bring people together and create a space for learning in a digital way. In this webinar, my colleague Alexander Kleijngeld, who is a senior solution consultant here at MetrixLab, will share best practices and some examples of effective packaging and sustainability communication so you can optimize your messaging and your pack design. Alexander is a key member of our global growth group where he oversees our packaging research. And one housekeeping item before we get started, if you have any questions during today's presentation, please type them into the chat box in your control panel. We'll have roughly 5 to 10 minutes at the end of the session to go through a short Q&A, and we'll be able to tackle your questions at that point. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to Alexander. Alexander, please take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Jay. Welcome, everyone. It's great to have you all join this webinar. And the topic for today is sustainable packaging, or more specifically, how best to communicate advances in packaging sustainability on the packaging itself. Now, you may already know this, or maybe you don't, but packaging design testing is a domain that we at MetrixLab are experts in. We test over 250 new packaging designs per year. And over the past few years, quite a few of those designs that we've tested revolved around some type of sustainability improvement. And in addition, we self-initiated and self-funded a few studies on this topic. And so what we're sharing today is the collective learning from all the work that we've done on this topic. I think it's fair to conclude that consumers are looking for a change. They're looking for products that are more healthier, more natural, and beyond product and ingredient health, they're looking for more sustainable packaging solutions. And this is nicely exemplified by the results from a Euromonitor study about the most influential trends in beverages. What we're seeing on the slide is that consumers are looking for more sustainable packaging alongside sugar reduction and the avoidance of artificial sweeteners as their top 3 future needs in the beverages category. And a very recent report from McKinsey on the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic says that they expect consumer behavior to be sticky after the crisis, and then in particular, the attention paid to product safety, product health, and its environmental consequences. In other words, they too are predicting that packaging sustainability will only become an even greater priority to consumers than it already is today. And it's not without reason that consumers see sustainable packaging as an urgent priority. With regularity, we're exposed to new alarming scientific findings about the impact of unsustainable practices on our health and the environment. As an example, at the 2019 Plastic Health Summit, researchers from the University of Utrecht in the Netherlands released evidence that microplastics cause accelerated human cell death and that ingestion is simply harmful to our health. And while microplastics are a product ingredients problem more than a packaging problem, it's also clear that these types of news stories contribute to an overall unease about product packaging and in particular plastic packaging, of course. And more specific to packaging, pollution from plastic packaging of our oceans, our rivers, our beaches, and roadsides are triggering a consumer backlash against plastic packaging. And understandably so, because if you're a little bit older like me, you will have witnessed firsthand how much of a problem pollution from plastic has become in the past 2 decades. Thankfully, there's a lot being done to tackle the problem by people like yourselves and others as well. A client of ours and a shining example is the Ocean Cleanup Initiative. They have the ambition and now also the technology and significant funding to start cleaning up our oceans and rivers. And gladly, among our clients, among you really, we're observing a wide variety of initiatives towards more sustainable packaging. The most significant or dominant move that we see in our practice is manufacturers moving from single-use plastics to virgin PET and recycled PET plastics. And second, an elegant solution can be to reduce the quantity or weight of plastics used. Think about concentrates or simply using fewer materials, no longer offering plastic straws and plastic lids as an example. We have seen a few cases, though, of this having unexpected negative consequences because consumers subconsciously tend to favor bigger, bulkier items. Third, we've seen clients shift out of plastics into paper, and that's great, but we understand that's not always easy because paper is heavy and it doesn't always offer the same level of protection and safety, and you can't see through paper, which is a problem in a few categories as well. Fourth, very promising is the development of bioplastics that are now coming to market in greater quantities and qualities. And also we're seeing how new technologies enable the shift from laminated, multi-layered materials towards recyclable monomaterials. And in glass, in some markets where they have the logistics in place, we see manufacturers moving from single-use glass bottles towards store returnable glass bottles. And there are many other forms and types of sustainable packaging initiatives. A great example of a sustainable packaging solution is this one. Supermarkets in Thailand are abandoning single-use plastics for banana leaves. And banana leaves are extremely sustainable packaging materials. The leaves are thick, durable, flexible, and waterproof, and are compostable, of course. And knowing that bananas grow in 135 countries and that the leaves are plentiful, I think this is a very promising and possibly high impact example. It's great to see how old school is becoming hip and trendy again. Or this one. We are all familiar with styrofoam coolers and styrofoam cups. They're convenient, but they're also pretty bad for the environment. And Igloo has now replaced styrofoam coolers with a biodegradable version that's made out of recycled paper and candle wax on the inside. And did you know that paper cups from Starbucks cannot be recycled because they're lined on the inside with plastic? And we're talking 6 billion cups per year. So in 2018, Starbucks pledged $10 million towards the development of a more sustainable, recyclable alternative. And the good news is that they've now begun to pilot paper cups that are lined with a biodegradable, compostable plastic. Loop is an important initiative against single-use plastics. This platform was launched in 2019 at the World Economic Forum and now offers close to 200 popular brands and products in reusable packaging, often glass, aluminium, or steel. And the platform is funded and supported by a lot of big brands and is now live in the US and the city of Paris and will soon be expanded to 4 more markets. This platform could turn out to be a viable solution if enough customers and brands come together into the program so that the logistics become affordable. And in parallel, we are observing a lot of communication on the topic of sustainable packaging. Manufacturers aren't typically shy about letting the world know about their sustainable packaging initiatives. So as an example, last year, Unilever announced packaging reduction targets and initiatives for their Dove brand, with an overall goal of lessening the use of virgin plastics by 10,000 tons per year. And as part of that effort, Dove is moving to bottles that are 100% made from recycled plastic. And that is something that they wish to highlight in this new promotional campaign, which included installing this vending machine in Grand Central Terminal in New York. And we believe that communication of sustainable packaging initiatives is a good thing. Here we're looking at a sizable billboard by Lucozade. And here's a print ad from the Coca-Cola company in the UK about how they are moving to bottles that can be recycled in full. And you know what? This type of communication is a good thing because consumers are eager to contribute to a more sustainable ecosystem, and they want to be informed about sustainable packaging initiatives, as this will allow them to take better informed decisions with regards to shopping, purchasing, consumption, and recycling. Yet, there are risks associated with communicating sustainability initiatives. So as an example, Coca-Cola's communication of its marine plastics recycling initiative received a bit of a backlash when it was hit by heavy criticism from the Break Free from Plastics Alliance, who essentially and quite effectively pointed out the irony that the marine plastics that the Coca-Cola company is considerably responsible for is now used to repackage those same products that caused the pollution in the first place and would now likely end up right back in the ocean again. And they called it greenwashing at its finest. And while for Coca-Cola this was a small pilot initiative only, as a brand, you'd like to avoid this type of feedback even when you are sincerely trying to do the right thing. And so we arrive at the central question addressed in this webinar today: how best to communicate about sustainable packaging on the packaging itself. For starters, let's first have a look at this fantastic example of sustainable packaging and the communication of that fact on the packaging itself. What makes this a method dish and hand wash packaging such a fantastic example is how all the different design elements work together to not only get the sustainability message across, but also to create a very powerful packaging design across the board in terms of visibility, communication, and ultimately also persuasion. The relevant design elements that you should take note of include, for example, how ocean plastic is used in methods sea minerals variant, and not, for example, their grapefruit or their green tea variants, or how the bottle is shaped like a sea urchin, including those characteristic dotted lines, or how the black color signals premium while it's actually made from the cheapest of ingredients, or how the recycled ocean plastic message on the bottle is secondary to the communication of brand and variant and the primary product benefit messages, or how that removable tag, whale tag at the top creates in-store standout and a call to action. The only concern that I would have with this design is whether regular buyers of the sea minerals variant can still find it on shelf, considering that normally the sea minerals variant is packaged in a transparent plastic bottle with a light blue color. Okay, so this method sea minerals example was just one of the many ways, one of the many examples that we've looked at and that we will be looking at in this presentation. And ultimately, what has led us to the formulation of these four best practice guidelines for on-pack communication of advances in sustainability. Yeah, you can read them from the slide, but what they're saying is, number one, prioritize product benefit messaging. Number two, switch in and switch out. In other words, don't plan on making it a permanent message. Number three, amplify your message with icons and claims. Number four, leverage disruptive material changes as an opportunity for disruptive growth. And what I suggest we do is that we look at the underlying cases and examples first, and then revisit these guidelines at the end of the presentation. And hopefully they will make a lot of sense at that time. So, as I mentioned before, among the largest sustainable packaging trends that we see is the move from single-use plastic to virgin PET and recycled PET plastics. And the question is how best to communicate such a move on the packaging itself. Now, we understand how this potentially is a big change to your organization, to your clients, and to the world at large. And so the question is, should you go with a big and creative message like Head & Shoulders have done here with this design? And I mean that design on the right side of your screen that was launched in early 2019 on a temporary basis at, amongst others, Asda supermarkets in the UK. Well, what we have found is that spontaneous reactions from consumers confirm that yes, indeed, they welcome the recycling message. But at the same time, this design also triggers some criticism. raising the question whether this particular execution was a smart move. First, I want to reiterate that the overwhelming majority of consumers had something positive to say about this initiative and the design. However, we also observed a fair amount of questions and concerns in 3 domains. The first one being about how the sustainability message takes away from understanding what this product is about and what it does for your hair. That's a shampoo after all. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm messing up the slides. Okay, we're back. A second point is that some comments were made about how this made the product and the brand look cheap, triggered by the Milk Bottle Association and lack of premium cues on packaging. And finally, some did not fully trust the claim and were asking for more specificity. And a virtual store test revealed that the sustainability message indeed is coming through loud and clear. Yeah, I would have been very surprised if we had found otherwise. But unfortunately, what we also found is that the increase in sustainability perception comes at the expense of product benefit understanding, shelf findability, and quite possibly a negative impact on sales. Yeah, and so the question is, if this isn't working, then what is? Well, what we know about powerful packaging design is that it adheres to these best practice guidelines. And you will notice that there are 9 best practice guidelines in total, and that they are organized around the 3 main roles that packaging design has to play: visibility, communication, and persuasion. And while we do not have time to go through all 9 guidelines, there is one that is particularly relevant in light of the question how best to communicate on the packaging itself your sustainability messages. And it's guideline number 5, which cryptically states to follow the recipe. Okay, so what does that mean? What that means is that it matters a great deal in which order various design elements on packaging are seen. And the strongest packaging designs are organized so that the brand is seen first, before an indication of the variant, and that before the functional benefit communication, and that before any RTBs, any reasons to believe, and that before sort of an emotive end promise, which is typically visualized sometimes with a call to action. And now there is this additional message, which is that your packaging is more sustainable than it was before. What we are consistently seeing is that consumers consider packaging sustainability an important but secondary benefit. And I mean secondary to the product benefit. And so packaging sustainability messaging is thus only ideally seen after consumers have first taken note of the primary functional product benefits. In other words, the recipe changes and the ideal order in which various design elements are seen is expanded, and sustainability messaging is thus ideally only seen after consumers have first taken note of the primary functional product benefits. This new recipe, or the order in which to lay out the various design elements, actually gives us an easy framework for determining the optimum placement on pack of a packaging sustainability message. Let me show you how. I have just shared with you how the Dove brand celebrated at Grand Central that they moved to bottles made from 100% recycled plastic. Now, this is important news for all their customers, and so I think that at some point in time it would make sense for them to add a patch onto their packaging to share the news. Eye tracking on pack is needed to reveal the order in which the various design elements are seen, and you can see the results from eye tracking superimposed on the image in the middle. The numbers represent the order in which the design elements are seen. Consumers will typically look at the brand first, which is Dove, before looking at 2 promises: nutritive solutions and iconized this healthy hair curl, before arriving at number 4, the functional benefit of this being a daily moisturizing shampoo. And so ideally, the sustainability message isn't seen until after people have first seen number 4. And that means that a recycling patch is probably best placed towards the bottom, or as an alternative all the way up top, where it would be seen as the very last element that people look at. Simple, right? Unfortunately, no, it's not that simple, because there's a little bit more to it still. Packaging design can be like this balancing act. And this also goes back to one of those 9 best practice guidelines for powerful packaging design that we just looked at. And what we mean with a balancing act is that emphasizing one message on pack creates a very real risk of weakening other messages. And this could well be the case for this Hellmann's product, where on the left, we see the RTB of cage-free eggs mentioned in text, and a picture which has been replaced on the right with a recycled bottle message. And now what I suspect is that this change will, without a doubt, positively impact sustainability perceptions. But at the same time, it may well take away, because now we're missing the photo of the eggs, from, for example, design appeal, product taste, and quality of ingredient perceptions, and also premium value perceptions. And so you should be aware of the fact that adding sustainability messaging introduces a real risk of distorting the balance. Not always, but yeah, we see it happen quite often. And if this happens, what we typically are saying is that it's acceptable in the short term. So if it's a temporary message, don't worry about it too much. It's only a real problem if the message is intended to stay on for a longer period or permanently. So let's have a look at a best-in-class example, one where the packaging sustainability message is in the right place and doesn't distort the balance. It's only adding to it. This sun design communicates brand first, that's number 1, before the variant, number 2, before product benefits of naturalness and effectiveness, that's number 3 and 5 and 6, before arriving at the packaging sustainability claim, which is number 7 at the bottom of the pack. And after that, people go on to look at additional RTB messages. All right, let's talk about the role of symbols and icons. We know that symbols and icons work very well for communicating product sustainability benefits. On this slide, we're looking at a few strong examples. On the first row, we have icons that communicate bio and organic credentials. On the second row, icons that communicate origin and fair trade credentials. On the third row, icons that communicate sustainable farming and harvesting credentials. And really the only symbol that I've ever seen to not work so well was a bee on a dishwasher tabs packaging. Yeah, because consumers couldn't make the connection between bees and tabs. Hence our conclusion that icons will typically work well, provided that, of course, that they're easy to understand and that they fit the category context. And icons can obviously also play a role in communicating packaging sustainability. And what we have seen is that the combination of an icon and a short, punchy claim can be particularly powerful. On the left-hand side of the slide, we're looking at a few examples of icons and claims that almost always, let's say always work well. We're seeing a few well-known recycling icons that are easy to understand, and they go well together with the simple claims that essentially says the same thing as the icon. This is a recyclable packaging, or this is a climate-friendly packaging. In the middle, we're looking at recycling icons that were more difficult to understand. That's those recycling Mobius triangles with a number inside, and also that round circularity icon was not fully understood either, maybe because it lacked familiarity. And in addition, we're seeing that claims that make a direct appeal, such as recyclable with your help or help us do the right thing, can be frowned upon by consumers. It's more effective to make an implicit appeal than going with such an explicit direct appeal. And finally, we've seen that any claims in text or through icons that flag or signal a reduction in CO2 from this new packaging, are not understood and therefore not accepted. And we hypothesized that the link between packaging and a CO2 reduction in general is simply too abstract for most people. It's being said that all good things in life come in threes, and so we're often observing in packaging design a triple benefit communication style. As you can see here on the slide, and triple benefit communication can make a packaging design particularly powerful as long as it's simple and clear. And this is nicely done in this Signal toothpaste packaging on the left and the Cut Door ice cream packaging on the right. Both designs effectively communicate a combination of 3 product and packaging sustainability benefits. Now moving to the final of our 4 packaging sustainability messaging guidelines, let's talk about more disruptive changes. And what we mean with disruptive changes are those changes where the packaging material or the shape or the size or the color of the material visibly changes. These more disruptive changes can offer a fantastic opportunity for repositioning your brand or for setting your brand up for growth. But in order to get it right and prevent it from turning into a negative disruption, there are 2 things that you must do. It starts with understanding what exactly creates powerful packaging design, and I will tell you what that is. Through advanced analysis of our PACT benchmark database, that's our packaging testing benchmark database, we have derived that there are 4 key drivers of powerful packaging design. Visibility is the most important driver, and then particularly shelf standout, that is people noticing your product on shelf while shopping, while browsing, and the ability to find a specific variant from your brand that the consumer is interested in. A third driver is design appeal, and the fourth is how persuasive the communication of product benefits is. So these 4 drivers apply equally to disruptive packaging design, obviously. And so whenever you are considering a more disruptive packaging design change, you will want to make sure that the new packaging design performs at least equally, but ideally better on these 4 drivers. So as an example, when this beer brand switched from shrink foil plastic to a cardboard flip top for its 6-packs, we found that actually shelf visibility and the ease of finding the product on shelf both improved from switching to this cardboard flip top. And finally, what if your disruptive new design is a line extension rather than a replacement of an existing design? So let's have a look at this new Echo SKU from the Chlorix brand. This is an extension of an existing successful range. And when looked at individually, this new Echo variant packaging design ticks all those boxes of a powerful packaging design. It has strong shelf visibility. It's easy to find on the shelf because of its color and strong branding. It's an appealing design, and it has clear communication of benefits, a mixture of product and packaging sustainability benefits. But it's also a line extension. And in case of a disruptive line extension, 2 additional questions, let's say performance criteria, come into play. The first one is brand block visibility. What we need to understand is how this new SKU is influencing the shelf visibility and findability of all the other variants. And it's not difficult to imagine that this design has the potential to take away a little bit from the visibility and findability of the existing SKUs. And the second one is, again, one that revolves around balance. Any line extension will have to find a balance between the communication of benefits that make this new variant unique, and the benefits that the full range of products have in common. So looking at this new eco design, we see enough of both elements. Taken from the brand and the full range, we see the same indications around this product being very powerful through its 5 pockets design. And specific to this SKU, we're seeing a lot of what makes this a unique SKU. The fact that both product and packaging are eco-friendly, which is then further reinforced by the color and by its scent of cucumber and fresh leaves. Okay, and that brings us around to those 4 best practice guidelines for the communication of packaging sustainability messages that we started with. First, what we have seen is that consumers do welcome sustainability packaging messages, but they're not buying your product for its green packaging, but because of the functional and the emotional benefits that it offers. And for that reason, the first guideline says to respect the recipe. That is the design hierarchy, by making sure that product benefit cues are seen first before your sustainability messages. And second, we've seen that communicating through your packaging design is like a balancing act. Emphasizing one message creates a very real risk of weakening other messages. And what we're saying is that you need to be prepared for your on-pack sustainability messages to detract, hopefully just a little bit, from other important messages. And for that reason, it makes sense to make sustainability messaging a temporary message. Third, we looked at icons and claims, and we've seen that icons that clearly communicate if a packaging can be recycled are highly appreciated. Call to action claims for recycling are better accepted when the message is implied rather than directionally stated. And a combination of an icon and a short claim can be very effective, especially when you are communicating multiple benefits. And finally, disruptive packaging changes, for example, when the material or the shape or the size or the color changes, potentially offer an opportunity for disruptive growth, but you want to make sure that the new design performs equally strong or better on the 4 most important criteria of packaging design. That is shelf visibility, variant findability, design appeal, and benefit communication. So in closing, what we hope is that you find these guidelines to be actionable. We hope that you can leverage these guidelines in situations where you are considering to communicate on pack about your packaging sustainability advances, efforts, etc. So yeah, on that note, are there any questions? Switch to Q&A.
Speaking of questions, Alexander, it looks like a few questions have begun to come in.
All right,
and
cool.
Just as a reminder, if anyone has any additional questions that they would like us to tackle, please use the chat function in your control panel. Just type them in and we'll be able to handle them real time. The first question, Alexander, it looks like it's come in. It's about the role of color in communicating sustainability. And you've mentioned about the power of green. Certainly that's in a way a no-brainer, but are there other colors that you have seen effective in a variety of categories to communicate sustainability effectively?
Yeah, okay, yeah, I understand the question. So yeah, it's true that we are seeing that the color green is being used a lot in sustainability messaging to highlight the sustainability claim. And yeah, that makes intuitive sense, because green flags natural, and green is also often a contrasting color. So yeah, it is highly visible. However, we're also seeing that many effective messaging examples aren't leveraging the color green. So by no means do we advocate that going with a green color to highlight or support your sustainability claim is the way to go.
Okay.
That's clear.
Let's see. The next question relates to package form it looks like. And I think in today's webinar, you commented a lot about the importance of visuals, icons, messaging hierarchy. But what role does package form play in communicating sustainability?
Yeah, well, I started the presentation with this example from Method Hand Wash, which was a great example where they leveraged shape really to get the message across. The message being that it was manufactured from ocean plastic. It was shaped like a sea urchin, and shape. There's an excellent example of how shape can further reinforce the message in a very subtle, subconscious way. However, changing a packaging shape or structure can be very expensive. Can be very disruptive to manufacturing processes. So, it's simply not always possible. And there's also this creative challenge as well. You have to have a good idea, like the methods team clearly had. So it's great, but sometimes cost prohibitive and not as easy as, for example, adding an icon and or a claim onto your existing packaging design.
Okay, perfect. No, thank you. Let's see. Next question looks like it's related to, there we go. A lot of what you talked about today, I believe, was what we call quantitative research or validation. What role does qualitative or even trying to bring the consumer's voice into the research process earlier? What are some thoughts or best practices that you've seen particularly effective?
Yeah, I mean, a variety of strategies. I would first look at.
I know it's a tough one.
I would start with looking at yourself and what it is that what your situation is. If your sustainability improvement is, for example, you switching from single-use plastic to recycled PET plastic, which is a switch that's hardly visible and noticeable to a majority of consumers, in such a case, you'll definitely want to add a message on your pack because consumers are eager to know, but maybe you don't have to test it with a rigorous, robust, quantitative test that includes virtual shelf and eye tracking and all the bells and whistles. You could either opt to do nothing, leverage our guidelines that we shared with you today, or maybe a quick sanity check, qualitatively, or a quick quantitative screener, if that makes you feel better. It's only in a situation where you're looking at a more disruptive change, for example, a change in material or shape, or going, for example, from transparent to colored materials, that we would absolutely recommend a more rigorous approach. And in that case, I would opt for an approach that includes shelf tests. Virtual shelf tests works fantastically well. That possibly includes eye tracking on pack. So definitely more quantitative in nature, but lots of behavioral simulation and system one type techniques included.
Okay, perfect. Here's a good one. And it relates to the differences between, we'll say, kind of category points of reference. And it's about entering a new category. So for a new category launch that a brand's undertaking, how or if does the advice change for the messaging hierarchy, and more specifically, the balance of efficacy and sustainability? So not necessarily a flanker, a line extension, but a new category entrant.
Right. So we have this brand, an existing brand entrenched in one category, entering a new category. with a sustainable packaging. And that's fantastic. Still, it's what we shared about following the recipe will apply, maybe even more so, because if we want to convince consumers about buying this product, this brand in the new category, we want to make sure that one, they notice brand, and if there are multiple variants, then the variant, and give them a very compelling reason for buying the product. And one of those reasons can be that it's packaged in something that's sustainable, but as we see time and time again, that's only secondary to the primary product benefits, which of course should be relevant to the category. So yes, I would say that the same rules apply, maybe even more so.
Okay, cool. Here's a terrific one, and I think this person obviously has been doing kind of market knowledge or consumer insight work for quite some time, because they indicate that consumers are easily confused, and more specifically when communicating recycled versus recyclable. Any recommendations on how to handle this type of communication on a package?
Yeah. No, I find that confusing as well. So I can relate to the question. Yeah, I think that's where they're two different things, and both are relevant, and they can both be true, one or the other, or in more and more cases, both are true. When it's over and done with the product, you want to recycle it. So whether or not the packaging is recyclable should be very clear, and that's where icons and claims can help. And then in addition, yeah, people do appreciate it if the packaging is made from recycled plastics, as opposed to virgin PET. If it's made from virgin from single-use plastics, then you can also not recycle it. So no, that's not the way to go. But if you are already made from recycled plastics, that's also something you'd like to share, as in the Dove example, certainly on a temporary basis. And that's something that you could, what we see most often working well is that you communicate that on the front of pack, and then whether or not the packaging is recyclable, you do that with the icon and the claim on the back of pack. So maybe that's an interesting perspective, is to use front and back for the two different messages.
Okay, cool. And let's see, just in the interest of time, I think there is a variety of questions that touch on this topic, but there's one in particular I think is really good, and that's, do you see anything specific when renovating a product from plastic to craft paper or kind of alternate materials? And I think the question more specifically is, any way to make it stand out or become more predominant on the shelf?
Well, how to make a product stand out on shelf, we could organize a whole webinar on that question alone. In fact, we've done that. We have learnings on that topic, so maybe that would be a nice follow-up to share with those people who asked the question. Very briefly, from one, well, as I already mentioned, shelf visibility is critically important. It's one of the most important drivers of the power of packaging design, simply because if you don't see it on shelf, you're not going to buy it. And there are typically what we see is two avenues through which you can achieve shelf visibility, standing out from the crowd, if you will. One is by leveraging color, contrasting color. And what we see in particularly working well is if brands use sort of a two-tone, a combination of two colors. That's a secret recipe to create fantastic shelf standout. And the other secret, if you will, is to have very strong, clear branding, for example, through a logo, but can also be a logo with some other distinctive assets in support. To have that logo and those distinctive assets very clearly visible on the packaging in an uncluttered way and placed centrally. That's typically 1/3 from the top. Yeah, that's it. And we have some very nice examples of how brands create great shelf standout, and also brands that go the other way and don't do so well. So you can learn from looking at best practices and not so best practices.
Got it. Okay, well, one of the things I think we committed to at the start of the webinar is to end on time. So thank you, Alexander. Obviously very informative. You did a terrific job. And just wanted to kind of wind this down and thank everyone for taking the time to join us today. Hopefully you found the webinar to be both informative and insightful. And actually, we did get a question around this. Just wanted to give everyone a heads up that be on the lookout as your MetrixLab client account lead. We'll be reaching out over the next few days to share a recording of today's session. We're going to be able to also share what we're calling a synthesized version of the materials that Alexander presented today. So please be on the lookout for that. And with that, again, thank you for joining us again today, and wish you all the best. Thank you.